Hello, and welcome to Unsheathed with your hosts, Kyell and K.M. We hope that you enjoy the program. Please stick around afterwards. There'll be cake and blowjobs.
Oh god, so no lie, I went to see X-Men First Class, and it was 2 minutes into the movie, and this one woman, her phone's on, and she's texting, and she's right in front, and her screen is just neon bright, lighting up half the theater. And one of my friends, who is actually the son of a preacher, just leans forward and just goes turn off your phone, and everything just goes and just and everyone just sort of all quiet, just that's how you do it.
Yeah. Did you see the YouTube video from the Alamo Theater in Austin, Texas?
No.
There's go look it up. They have a policy, and it says we will kick you out if we find you using your cell phone in the theater. And they kicked out this woman, and they got a voicemail message from her. So they made a YouTube video of her voicemail, with her voicemail as the audio, and then their own commentary over it in visual. Go look it up. The Alamo Theater, Austin, Texas. It's great.
Okay.
It makes me want to go to Austin just to visit that theater.
So thanks for everybody coming. We're going to get started. And 5, 4...
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Unsheathed episode number 86. We're live in Denver at Rocky Mountain FurCon number 5. I am the prodigal fox returning Kyell Gold.
And I am was begged for several months to come back, K.M.
And we're delighted to be back here at Rocky Mountain FurCon with a very nice size audience here. I think this is probably the biggest audience we've ever had at this convention.
Yes. I think you are right, Kyell.
We've replaced K.M. Hirosaki with robot K.M. Hirosaki. Let's see if anyone notices.
I don't know. I think at least a couple of the listeners would be kind of turned on by that. But
yeah, probably.
He's a robot otter? Oh.
Although, isn't here, is he? Okay, you can edit out that name, right? Okay. Yeah, and I think the audience size is more a function of the fact that this convention has really grown.
There is that.
Yeah.
Although you have slightly more pull this year.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I was very kindly invited by the convention to be their guest of honor this year. One of the two. Thank you. Along with the very talented artist Rukus. She's not here, but we'll show her some love anyway. She's awesome. We've had a couple panels together, and we actually have a good rapport. Not that you should be jealous, but
I'm not. I'm just pouring myself a glass of wine because I'm happy for you.
But we've had a really good time. We're here. It's Saturday night of the convention, so it's this is like the high point, the climax of the convention, if you will. Will you?
No, that was just
broken already.
That was too whatever that was.
So KM, what have you been doing since our last show back in our mountain bunker?
Oh my God! I think I was in a coma for a while, and no, I've been whiling away the summer doing work, and let's see, I've mostly been waiting on feedback for my novel manuscript, which has finally started to pour back in. It's all been very positive, so yay.
Yes, have you actually mentioned on the podcast that you finished a draft of Summerhill?
Oh, I don't think I did. Wow. Yeah, I did that. God, it was just so long ago that I didn't remember.
Yeah, no, it's been a while. But congratulations on that. That's awesome. And glad the feedback is turning out well. I know I've enjoyed what I've read of it.
Yeah, I'm hoping to have a edited, revised, rewritten draft done early fall.
Okay.
I wanted it to be done by the end of the summer, but that's in a month and a half, and I don't think I can do it that quickly.
Yeah, it's really flown by.
Yeah.
I've been very busy.
Just didn't help either.
Yes. I've been very busy preparing for Rocky Mountain FurCon. I had a new book come out at this convention called In the Doghouse of Justice, which is a collection of League of Canids short stories, and some of which have been published before, but 3 new stories, and the ones that have been published before have been kind of tightened up and toned down slightly to be more acceptable to an audience that does not need X-rated material. The original versions are still available online.
I applaud the creative framing of the illustration that goes with the History Channel story.
Yeah, the History Channel story was a tough one to do because it's mainly nothing but explicit material, so I had to be very creative with that one. But to find out what I did, you'll have to buy the book. And so between that and the preparations for coming to the con and doing a bunch of panels, preparations for some other travel that we've been doing, and working on some other writing experiments and revising a couple of other novels that I've been working on. Other than that, I haven't been doing a whole lot this summer. So
no.
I know it's been so quiet, but we are glad to be back in front of the microphones, glad to be in front of you people again, and are we going to just start with taking some questions, or do we have stuff to talk about?
I was like, don't ask me. I'm just the one on the little switchy thing. I don't even. What's that even called?
The switchy thing? The mixing board?
I know what it's actually.
You mean our
called.
producer?
No. You know that thing with the
thing with
the headphones
and the other stuff
and the beard.
Yeah.
That. No.
Yeah. Let's take some questions. So hopefully you guys came prepared with some questions, because otherwise we're going to have to make up our own questions and ask them to each other, and I don't think that would be nearly as entertaining.
Depends on how late in the evening it gets.
Well, that's true, and how low the wine in the bottle gets. I do have one thing, actually.
It is delicious.
A listener came in yesterday, and I was manning the table in the dealer's room, and from the point I got there through like an hour and a half, I had no time to do anything but sell books, which was awesome, and thank you all for coming by the table and buying things. And somebody came up with this bottle of Coke Zero, and I was like, oh my God, bless you, I need this Coke Zero right now. And he was like, oh, it's for the podcast, it's a Japanese Coke Zero. And I was like, oh, I can't drink it now. So, but it is actually a real impressive bottle. May I ask you, is there anything in particular on there in Japanese that stands out that would be amusing to read on the air? Because I cannot read Japanese.
There is this one little thing underneath where it's talking about how it's a plastic bottle. It says, yes, recycle, no poiste, which means like, yes, recycle this, no, don't just throw it on the ground.
What does the little sticker on top say?
You have one redeemable point at Coca-Cola.jp. Access now.
Coca-Cola.jp, here I come. All right.
Yes, I'm sure navigating that site will be no problem for you. Let's see, anything else?
What's in the little bubble beside the logo on there on the front?
That says 0 sugar, 0 preservatives, 0 added flavorings.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so I'm gonna try this on the air finally after a day.
It's cold. It was in a fridge.
It was, but it's also at altitude now, and I'm never sure how that's going to affect it.
Oh God! You should have seen my bottle of conditioner yesterday morning.
Yes, I saw.
All over me. Well, mostly just all over my
cheers,
hand.
everyone.
I bet it tastes like Coke Zero, doesn't it?
It does, but a little bit different. I think there's a little bit of soy sauce in there.
Oh, it does taste different. You're right.
Yeah, it's a little.
I think I like it a little better.
Now everybody, kid has to clear his palate.
Oh, that's what I'm tasting. It's vodka.
Actually, yes, it's made with real artificial sugars.
I was gonna say, it tastes. But so does the American Coke Zero have sucralose in it?
It does. It's a blend of Ace K and sucralose, I think.
Okay, because that's what that. I was looking at the ingredients and they mentioned that there.
Oh, it's just that. Okay.
I don't think I realized that Coke Zero had sucralose.
The person who dropped this off dropped it off on my table, and I was really busy, and then they were gone after that. Are they here right now? Are you here? No? Wow. Thank you, Anonymous Coke Zero from Japan donor. If you come in later or listening to this podcast later, know that your gift was greatly appreciated. Even though I kind of wanted it more at the time than I do right now, but
we have other fun beverages.
We do.
Should we save those?
Would
for
you like
later?
to talk about what you were drinking?
Okay, so what I'm drinking now. What I'm drinking here. Okay.
Well, you can talk about the other thing too, because I'm not sure the audience has really fully appreciated the bottle in the center of the table here.
First, though, this thing that I'm drinking, this bottle of wine, which is not because I'm despondent that Kyle's going to leave me for Ruckus. It's a Pinot Noir.
We asked her to this podcast, but she couldn't make it.
As you can see, or maybe not, it has a sea otter on the bottle, which is the wrong kind of otter. No, they're okay.
Is there really a wrong kind of otter?
I don't know, like small clawed otter?
No, but they have small claws. Isn't that cute?
Okay, the Amazonian the Amazonian giant otters, never mind.
Otter on the bottle.
Otter on the bottle.
Drawn by.
Oh god, this was it was drawn by Kenkit, wasn't it?
It was.
Yes. Kenkit, who you can also find in the dealer's room.
Yes.
Oh, you even credited the art to her too. Awesome.
Yes. They did not steal it for the wine.
Okay. I didn't know you like I don't think I've ever seen like an art credit on a wine bottle though.
Okay.
I'm just saying.
But anyway, what kind of wine is it?
It's a Pinot Noir, 2009.
And how is it?
It is actually very good. Actually, I don't know if anyone saw me when I first took a sip. I made like that face, like that ooh sort of face when I first tried it.
He made his ooh face.
My ooh face, which is different than another thing. Oh yeah.
And here in the center of the table, I will ask if Kit wants to give any more background on this, but Kit
it does speak for itself.
Kit came back from the liquor store earlier this weekend with a bottle of smoked salmon flavored vodka from the Alaska Distillery, which is a small independent company located at the foothills of the Alaska Range, where they handcraft spirits with ultra pure glacier water and the finest grains, and apparently fish. But it's from Wasilla, Alaska.
Oh, it's from Wasilla? I didn't know that. So it's Sarah Palin salmon vodka? Now I feel like unclean on so many levels.
It was tried on a previous podcast, and K.M. gave quite the run-up to the actual tasting of it.
I have to have
in which he went on at length about how terrible he was sure it was going to be, and even after I told him with my vast knowledge of alcoholic beverages that it was not going to be that bad, then he drank it and said, "Oh, it's not that bad."
I was like, "Oh my god, if I drink this, I'm gonna throw up. Like, don't make me do this. I don't want to do that." Oh, it's not bad. I like the cap. It's got like the Big Dipper with the stars pointing to Polaris, which is the North Star.
Polaris, the North Star. While he's tasting the wine, are there audience members who have questions for us? Raise your hands. Don't be shy. Come on.
Oh, there's one.
There's one over there. Would you like to come up and
it's this guy.
Approach the microphone? Are you going to taste that on the air right now?
Yes. So just to prove, as you can see from the bottle, it's apparently not terrible because over half of it's gone.
K.M.
Which is not my
Hirosaki
fault.
has poured a glass of the salmon-flavored vodka. He is drinking it.
I do need to chase that with more wine, but it's actually not bad.
He has drunk it. So that's proven that it is not that bad.
And it actually does taste like smoked salmon vodka. That's really the only way I can describe it. Like, if you look, what is the logical midpoint between smoked salmon and vodka? This is.
So, please come up, introduce yourself, and ask us your question.
I'm Hobbs Dog, and I was wondering if you could just tell us a little bit about your experience at Comic-Con, and Rikoshi, what you were doing during that time as well, aside from in a coma.
It's okay.
All right.
This is why we have editing.
Yes.
That's okay.
Yes. I was at Comic-Con this year for a couple days, and we did have a very interesting experience there. I'll talk a little bit about kind of the more general experience, which was over the last few years as I've started to go to some of these comic conventions. Initially, the things going on behind me right now. Initially, the experience of going to a Comic-Con with furry material was you would get mostly people walking by and saying, what's that? And then just walking on past. More and more people have started to hear about it. They've started to recognize the material from one year to the next, and they get curious enough to come down and actually look at it. And most of the people seem to have pretty neutral to positive opinions. Even the people that come by and say, it's not my thing, don't say, you people are horrible freaks who ought to be locked away and shot. So we feel that that's progress. The specific interesting thing that happened at Comic-Con was last year, Sofawolf had their booth across from Penny Arcade, and the Penny Arcade guys recognized some of the people selling at Sofawolf, and Tycho of Penny Arcade, who was the writing half, said he was going to come by and look at the books. He came by. He was mostly interested in the adult stuff.
How did he phrase it again?
He said people were like, oh, well, we have these comics and these comics, and he was like, show me the...
Was it the weird stuff?
Show me the weird stuff, yeah, something like that. Or like the really naughty, not... something. It wasn't naughty, the dirty, or like the dirtiest stuff, whatever. Yeah, he doesn't. He fortunately does not know the lingo that well yet. And he did. He was on his way somewhere, but apparently said, "I will definitely come by and buy a book," and didn't. Because as Comic-Con is huge and it's busy and it's crazy and people get caught up in things, and before you know it, it's Sunday afternoon and everybody's packing up, and then you're having dinner afterwards, and you're going, oh, I meant to go back to that booth and do that thing. So he felt badly enough about it, though, that he mentioned Sofawolf in his journal the Monday after Comic-Con last year. And so this year, the Sofawolf guys went over to him and said, hey, so you're going to buy that book? And he said, yes. Pulled out $20 and said, here, bring it over. And so they chose Vol, which was the one he had talked about.
Was the gay Fox Castle sector.
He said he was interested in furry fiction because he is interested in exploring areas outside his normal realms of thought. And he said, bipedal foxes having gay sex in medieval castles is about as far outside the realms of my thought as it is possible to get. Which I would challenge, but I'm not sure he wants that to be challenged.
I know some of their strips get pretty close to gay furry sex already.
Yeah, we have the gentleman up front here wearing the Penny Arcade Dick Wolves shirt, which is also relevant to the story tangentially later on. If you don't know the whole Dick Wolves thing, they posted a strip in which they were making fun of a game in which you're not supposed to rescue prisoners.
Well, you only need to save a certain number,
right?
And beyond that, you're not obligated to save more.
And so it was the hero, and one of the prisoners was like, "Please save me," and he's like, "I've already saved enough people." And the guy was like, "Every night we get raped by the Dick Wolves," which led to a sort of unfortunate escalation of stuff in which somebody wrote to them and said, "You're making light of rape," and they said, "We're not making light of rape. We're making fun of this game." And then all of Penny Arcade's readers piled onto this person, and it became kind of embarrassing for them, and they ended up pulling the shirts actually off their store. And
they did have the
they did have the what?
They had the counter argument comic. Where it's like, no, it's like we hate rapers and all of the rapes they do.
Yes. Which I think initially they were sort of, I don't want to spend too much time speculating on it. Initially they were like, it's kind of silly that people are accusing us of being pro-rape because of this comic, which I guess it kind of is, but then, their readers went one too far, and anyway, it became just something that I think they're happier to have in the past. Although I did inscribe one of the books that we gave to Tycho with hope this holds you over until I finish Night of the Dick Wolves.
I had not heard that. That's a good one.
And when he got the books, he got rather excited and said, is there anyone working on a Dick Wolves book? Because I know all about their ecology and their behavior. and their desires. So he was very entertained by it. I was a little bit worried that it might be sort of hitting a sore spot, but he was very entertained by it, so that was very cool. We threw in a free copy of Out of Position because, Vol is kind of an early work, and it is, as I've said before at this convention, is very full of sexors.
Is it the sex time?
It is. It is not the sex time yet.
Oh, wait, we haven't had the
It's the sex
chime.
It's right. Anyway, Out of Position being sort of the more popular one and perhaps of more appeal to them. Anyway, so Tycho ended up tweeting a picture of Out of Position with the caption, "Startling, incredible," which I took as a positive review. And subsequently, there was some back and forth because people were like, "Oh my God, that was retweeted at me," and multiple times because many furries read Penny Arcade, and so then there was a little bit of a thing where I said that we had given the book to Tycho, and then he was worried that people would think he was kind of trying to leverage his status as a famous person to get free shit, and he was like, I actually bought the book, and you threw in that other one. I didn't ask for it, and so I wanted to make sure everyone knew the whole story. Like, we threw it in for free, and he didn't ask for it. But he later wrote about the book on his journal again and said, I came back from Comic-Con with a pile of furry smut, as I usually do. But he actually said, he mentioned the book about the Fox and the Tiger American having gay sex in football locker rooms, but said he did not want to link to the author because he did not want him to receive what was something like undue attention or something like that.
Yeah,
And I think that went back to kind of being aware of the fan base, and so it's kind of interesting that I think he's legitimately interested in like what makes this fandom tick. Why are there people who want to read this kind of thing? Why are there people who dress up in costumes? And sort of as a result of this Twitter feed, he emailed me a little bit and was asking about why is your avatar Fox? Which was a really interesting question that I think he didn't expect to get to sort of the heart of the fandom as much as it does. Because it's one of those things where it's like, if you could ask just one question, why do you represent yourself as an animal person? And that's kind of like, well, that's why we're furries.
that's the big keystone thing.
So anyway, it became an interesting discussion, but my impression is he's actually legitimately curious. He's I forget now what I said earlier, but just legitimately curious, very nice person, and really just interested in all kinds of things. And this is just one of the things that he doesn't quite understand, and he really wants to. So that was very cool, and I think it's somewhat indicative of attitudes kind of changing towards furries, not just in the mainstream, which is kind of nice, but whatever. The thing that we've said is most furries are worried that if they say furry to someone in the mainstream, people will be like, outcast, unclean. And in fact, most people in the mainstream will be like, you mean those guys that wear costumes sometimes? Or they'll just be like, huh? Most people don't really know. Most people don't really care. But in the comics world, which is sort of related, it's nice that it's getting sort of more of the equal treatment. Don't know what thing you're talking about. Oh, yeah, I did get. It was a tweet or something, or was it a direct message? I don't remember. It wasn't a direct message. I did get one negative comment from someone, but it turned out when I went to look at his feed, he was just like, he was tweeting to everybody like "die fur fag," and that was like all he was tweeting. So, you'll have this. But I think it's like with we equate being furry to being gay a lot, and sort of the accepted wisdom in the gay community now is if you just present being gay as sort of a normal part of your life, then people will accept it as being a normal part of your life in the general course of things. And I think the same is kind of true of furry. If you come up there and you're like, and people are like, oh, what's that thing you're reading? And you're like, oh, this. It's nothing. It's nothing. It's just, no, I'm into this really weird stuff, and you probably don't want to look at it. And it's just, then they'll be like, oh, what are you reading? How bad is it? And their imagination will just go. If you just say, oh, it's just stuff with animal people. It's just the kind of thing I like. Do you want to look at it? If you don't, that's cool. And, whatever.
Kyle don't care. Kyle don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
Whatever. Here he is reading a book. Oh, look, he's on the subway.
I was going to say I'm not going to go there. Throw an ice cube at that man. So I don't know. What's your take on all that?
Yes.
KM.
No.
Since I've been talking,
No,
I
agree that there's
Japanese Coke Zero.
I actually, like, whenever I'm in Seattle, I'm like, God, it would be awesome if we could just, like, interview him and, like, talk to him. Like, because there's, like, totally, like, this, like, that could be a thing. Like, I think that would hit, like, if we, like, had, like, hey, like, we have one of the people from Penny Arcade on our show, like, a lot of people would listen to that. And I think that we are really misrepresented, and a lot of that's due to other people misrepresenting us on our own behalf. And so I think that, like, having a sort of like, hey, look,
us misrepresenting ourselves, or other people picking up sort of on the whole furry shame thing.
I think it's a little actually no, like, the fandom does have this component of, like, furry shame, and I really think that, like, we're at the point where we need to grow out of that.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if I think you agree, but I'm not necessarily advocating kind of the furry pride. Like, I'm going to wear my collar and my tail to work, and if anyone asks me about it, I'm going to show them FA and tell them to turn the adult flag on, and don't like shove it in people's faces.
Yeah, but I mean, on my flight out to Anthrocon earlier this summer, I ended up talking to the two people in my row. It was a husband-wife couple, and it turned out that the wife was also a writer, because they were like, oh, like, why are you flying to Pittsburgh? And I'm like, oh, I'm going to a convention. Like, oh, what kind of convention? And I'm like, oh, like, it's called Anthrocon. It's like, oh, it's like a trade show. I'm like, yeah, basically, like, for what I do. It's like, what are you? It's like, oh, like, I'm a writer and an author. I get stuff published. I go here to help promote my work. I'm like, oh, like, cool. What do you write? I'm like, I write stories about animal people. And they're like, oh, yeah. And they, like, thought that was interesting. It wasn't like why would you write stories about animal people?
I usually kind of do it in layers. Like, you'll say, oh, I write science fiction fantasy, and if people aren't interested in science fiction fantasy, they'll just be like, oh, okay, and that's enough. If they are, then they're like, oh, what kind? And then you're like, oh, I write stuff with animal people. And I think I've told this story years ago where I told a coworker that I went to a science fiction convention, and she was like, oh, what kind of science fiction? And I was like, oh, it's sort of the animal people focused anthropomorphic. And she's like, oh, a furry convention. And I was like, so there you go.
I remember one time, I don't know if I've mentioned this on the podcast or not ever, but I was putting in for time off at my old job. And it's like, my boss was just like, oh, like, what are you doing? It's like, oh, like, I'm just, like, taking a trip out of town. And then, like, he, like, looked at the, he's like, wait, are you going to Anthrocon? And, like, my response wasn't, oh, no, he knows. I was like, wait, you know what Anthrocon is? Like,
yeah.
How do you know what Anthrocon is? I was just sort of like, I'm like, yeah, it's
where I'm very entertaining.
And he's like, oh, okay. And he's like, wait, really? And I'm like, yeah, really. He's like, oh, okay. And signed my time off sheet and gave it back to me. Like, there you go.
Bring me back some porn. Who else? Who's got a question?
Dear Notcast, my boss asked me to buy him some Cub snuff. What do I do?
We have a gentleman in the back. I think this is. I'm not sure how to pronounce your name. Danath.
Yeah. How's the Coke Zero, by the way?
The Coke Zero is awesome.
Good. Okay. Yeah, I'm Dana.
Was this you're the one who brought this?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. You weren't here when I asked.
Sorry.
You came and you brought it and then ran away.
Next door.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, poker was going on.
Thank you very much.
Lost, unfortunately. But
now you're 20% poorer.
So you're
I know, right?
You're saying that the bronies are losers?
Yeah. It's harsh.
Wow, Unsheathed listenership dropped like 60%. What happened?
This may have been asked on a podcast a long time ago. I've been listening to your guys' podcast from like episode 1 when I'm driving. And
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I
Started
found-
episode 7.
I found,
seriously.
Gets better.
I found the first like 5 episodes. It took me a while, but I found them and I started there and I listened. It was somewhere weird too, but I found. But anyways,
I
Nowadays,
think
you have
they've
to
been
pay for
pirated
it.
on some
Anyways.
Russian archive. They just pirate anything now, even if it's free.
but this may have been asked a while ago, and it may have been why it popped in my head. But I wanted to ask, when you pick characters, I'm curious about when you assign a species. Like, at what step in the character development process do you decide he's going to be a fox, he's going to be a wolf? Is it drawn from, like Aesop's fables? Well, the fox is clever, so if you have a clever character, well, he's going to be a fox. Is it that type of thing, or if it's just I like wolves, so he's going to be a wolf?
I know we have talked about this before, but
think
it's
you
certainly
have.
worth going into
No, yeah,
again.
definitely.
Yeah.
It's sort of part and parcel with just the rest of the character creation process for me. It's like I decide it when I'm deciding the rest of the details about them. Like, what's their personality like? How do they speak? What do they look like? What animal are they? Like, that's just sort of all happens at the same time. And a lot of it's like, okay, like clever fox, playful coyote, that sort of thing. But there are sort of personality types that meet with certain species better than others, and I see this in the fandom a lot. Like, you can look at your friends and like what species they are, and like you can sort of like tell, like, okay, yeah, and like you can sort of see a common thread, like, hey, like all of my wolf friends have this in common, all of my tiger friends have this in common. And all right, here's a game you should play with your furry friends and people who aren't furry. Is pick a like non-furry person and have your non-furry friends like all secretly assign a species to that person, and like don't like collaborate on it, don't like huddle, like decide by yourself what species would this person be, and you'll be surprised at how often you'll all pick the same species for that person. It's actually really interesting.
Yeah, and I think that's one reason that there's a not as big a diversity of species in the fandom. I mean, everybody kind of goes for, in general, sort of the North American carnivores, because it's a North American-centric fandom, and the carnivores are the cute and attractive animals, and then you've got...
dances, motherfucker!
Yeah.
Sorry.
But also because the sort of North American, European animals are the ones that we have these associations with. We have these personality associations with. Like, if I say someone is a wolf-type personality, everybody has kind of an idea of what that means. If I say someone is like a platypus-type personality,
I know
they have poison spurs, but
I know
apart
a
from
platypus furry, but it's just like, yes. Like, because he's really weird.
that. Right.
Which, like, I think the platypus is God and or nature's idea of a practical joke. It's like, let's take duck bills, beaver tails, poison spines, web feet, eggs, and electrolocation, and all make one animal.
Right. It was kind of like the like when you've got like those 5 little pieces of soap left over and you kind of mash them all together to make one. Anyway, but yeah, my process is kind of the same, and we do have these sort of animal to personality correlations in our heads from fairy tales, from Aesop's fables, from Walt Disney, from all the stuff that we grew up with. And so when I'm thinking about a character, I think about not only what the character traits are, but also, are you playing against type? Because you can have, if I'm like, this character is kind of, nice character but a little bit slow, and like, do I want that to be on type or do I want it to be a little against type? Because you could make him a fox and everybody's like, oh, he's a really sweet fox, but I keep expecting him to try to put one over on me, but no, he really is just a little slow. Or you could say, and I'm not going to pick whatever species it would be if it was not ironic, because I don't want to insult anyone out there in the audience who might be a deer. Oops.
I heard the D sound and thought you were going for dragon.
He said that one, not me. I love dragon people and always have.
Dude, Dragon Man
They
Mike
breathe
brings me
fire.
wine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They breathe fire.
Thumbs up for dragons.
Yes. The Unsheathed podcast loves dragons, unlike some other podcasts.
But another thing sort of similar in that vein, we were talking about the... I'll let you get back to that. I'm not
Sure.
super...
No,
but,
no.
like, I think that
This
is sort of about, like, the whole personality types and sort of, like, he's saying, like, oh, there's sort of a smaller variety because we have these recognizable personality types to go to. I think this is also why, like, a lot of, like, the furries who are in, like, their late teens, early 20s tend to, like, change their species a lot for, like, a few years because at that age, you're still trying to figure out what your own personality is.
Yeah.
And,
No, I
like,
agree.
I'm not saying that older furries don't change what species they are ever, but it's much more common in, like, younger people, like, I would say, like, between, like, 18, 25. Like, that's where you're a lot more fluid as a person, and it's like, wait, like, weren't you, like, a wolf, like, 6 months ago? It's like, yeah, like, no, I'm a half dingo, half fox. It's like, okay, well, in 6 months you'll be something normal, and that's okay. Like, we'll bear with
Oh, what do you have against hybrids?
No, dude, one of my most popular stories is about a fulf, okay?
I know.
Well, who gives lots of blood?
Everyone knows I'm the one about. Well, yeah. So it's not because anyway.
No.
Yeah, and like other things, I've noticed that in general there are exceptions, but in general, people who choose dragon personas tend to be on the younger side. Because that's a very, like, flashy, sort of declarative, I'm this kind of...
It's also a very
persona.
misunderstood high school rebel.
It is also very sort of...
And I don't mean that as an insult either.
No,
I know
no.
it sounds like it,
And it's
it
not-
is worth giggling over.
For
but
those people who've settled on the... I mean, we have a friend who settled on a dragon persona much later in life, and that's great.
none of us believed him at first, but then, like, after a year, we were like, yeah, no.
No, he is kind of a self-centered prick, so it works.
Does he listen to our show regularly?
No, only when he's on it.
Oh, great. Narrow it down for the audience more. Why don't you? Go back to talking, Kyle.
Yeah, I know. No, and he'll. It's just an entertaining kind of thing to watch. So, I tend to limit my characters to wild animals. Mostly currently alive. I don't use a lot of extinct species, but I tend to use the ones that recur in our mythology and in our fables and in our Disney cartoons and whatnot. And I tend to not use domestic animal characters, just because this game, there was a whole big thing that we were talking about where somebody said, basically what I said is, if you end up having a husky character in your world, like a Siberian husky character, then your characters can't be eating meat. Which is a change, which makes sense in my head, and I will try to explain it to you. Siberian huskies are a domesticated species of dog, and the reason that characters in my world eat meat is because I have domesticated animals as separate, non-sentient kinds of animals. Like, domestic cows are not cows that walk around on two legs like in a Gary Larson cartoon. They're just domestic cows. They're cattle. And my reasoning is that wild animals evolved as continuing to be carnivores, and as they evolved sort of along the same path that people did and developed societies and started agriculture and whatnot, there are these sort of non-sentient animals roaming around that they were able to domesticate, and those animals never developed this sort of bipedal walking around on two legs. To the extent that two-legged animal people make sense from an evolutionary perspective, it does. And it does make sense.
Like, that used to not make sense to me. It's like, wait, it's just like why would some animals be like sentient and civilized and others weren't? But I'm like, well, we have humans, but we also still have apes, monkeys, and like other
Dolphins
simians, and so it's like, okay, yeah, I will totally buy that now.
So anyway, to answer your actual question instead of the one we kind of turned it into in our heads,
Ringtails are hot. I read about them a lot.
I try to correlate the species to the character, and it's mostly a question of sort of flipping. If I sort of know what the character's like, and I kind of flip through species in my head until I settle on one that feels right, and I can't narrow it down any more than that. It's just after writing for a while, which is, I tend to write about foxes a lot, and you could say without being completely untrue that my default is, well, he's a fox until it doesn't make sense for him to be a fox, and then he's not. But hey, that's how I write. Okay, I think that's enough talking about that. Unless you have something
no,
more
I'm
to say.
good. Next question.
Yeah, come on up. Introduce yourself. You have a long name that starts with an X.
Zeno.
What's the rest of it? you only read the first 4. What's the rest of it?
Cutthroat.
Okay.
I'm Zeno.
Hi, Zeno.
I was just wondering, like, who have you met at past cons, like Anthrocon and any other ones? But who's inspired you to create your writing or decide to be a writer rather than an artist?
Okay.
So actually, this is an interesting question because for a few years I was actually trying to be an artist. You will not find my art anywhere online because it's not there. But I was sort of doing writing and drawing both at the same time for a while, and eventually it was just like, I could tell that I was getting better at drawing, but writing I was already better at, and I had more fun with it anyway, so I sort of went off in that direction. But, it's less people I meet who inspire me so much as it is being with other creative people in the fandom that inspires me. Like, I always leave, and come back from furry conventions being, really energized and really excited to work on stuff. Because, this is a group of people who gets it. These are the people who, all right, they don't need to ask, why are these animal people? They already know that. And so it's more like, the questions that, you get asked aren't like, well, why are you writing about foxes? What's your audience? It's more like, oh, hey, what are you working on? I really liked that last story you posted. What's coming out from you next? And, that sort of thing. Knowing that there is this community out here that actively wants to, this is one of the things that I know I've talked about on the show before. People how do you, what do you feel about going mainstream? And I'm like, well, I'm already writing for the audience that exists for the stories that I want to write. So I'm I don't think that I need to really worry about that. So I'm writing stories about, animal people. Hey, look, there's a whole bunch of people who already want to read about that. Cool. I'm already okay with that. And in a less ambiguous, Kyell inspires me a lot, actually. Just, no, he does. I mean, it's funny because I actually met him because he sent me an email out of the blue one day and said, "Hey, I've read some of your stuff online. I think that you do some really good stuff." I'm I checked out your stuff that you put up online. I think you've got some good stuff. And this is the shining moment of humility here. This was a week or two before I left for Anthrocon. This was Anthrocon 2005, which was the last year it was in Philadelphia when it was at the Wyndham, if anyone remembers that. So I go there, and I'm at the Soapwolf press booth because that was the year that Heat 3 with the Adam Wan comic was released, so everyone was at that table buying that. And while I'm there looking at it, and I see this thing, it's it's Vol by Kyle Gold, and my first thought was, son of a bitch, he didn't tell me he wrote a book.
Didn't seem relevant.
So I bought it and I started reading it. And by the time I had gotten home, I had finished it, and I sent him this email. And I'm just first of all, I'm very angry you didn't tell me you had a book out.
I think that was the first time you called me a son of a bitch.
I did actually,
but not the last.
And then somewhere in the midst of our back and forth, we realized that we lived 15 minutes away from each other, and so it's just and he's oh, it's and I asked him do you want to get dinner and meet up? And he's okay, sure. But I'm bringing my boyfriend just so you don't get the wrong idea. And I'm no, go ahead. So we went up for dinner, and then after dinner, Kit brought me home and gave me wine, and that started us being best friends.
Because I will just point out that over email, you can't tell the difference between, hey, do you want to meet up and get some dinner? And, hey, you want to meet up and get some dinner? So...
Also, and if I hadn't clarified that and you had just shown up, considering how super gay I was blinged out when you showed up at the restaurant.
Yeah, that was interesting.
It was I'm gonna look around there, it's no, that's him. I don't even need to ask the waitstaff.
He had the fingernails all painted up.
My fingernails were
he
purple.
Had the pride necklace on.
I had a pride necklace and a pride bracelet and a fox pendant around my neck. So it's oh, that's the gay furry.
And I was yeah. One of the cases in which it was good that most mainstream people do not wear pride jewelry and animal jewelry at the same time. made it very easy to pick you out.
Yeah.
So
I had a glass of Chateau Saint Jean Gewürztraminer I was drinking when I met you.
in the I also had sort of dabbled in drawn. I think everyone in the fandom dabbles in drawn at one point or another because it's such a visual medium. And so I will say that one of the people who inspired me to become a writer was actually probably Ken, because I was still sort of thinking I could draw, and then I saw the stuff she was doing. And I was like, well, at least I know I can write. And maybe I should just take care of that and not try to, reach beyond my abilities. People at my answer is almost identical to KM's, except that except for the specific people that inspire me, but just going to conventions, and this is my abbreviated, furry is awesome because everyone is so creative, because we don't have this sort of base material to derive our fandom from. And I've been hearing actually, like in the last 6 months, that the word fandom is actually not an appropriate term for the furry community, because what are we fans of?
The
Disney's Robin Hood?
No, actually, I think it was Mark Evanier at Anthrocon was explaining it, and I think the phrase he said is they're fans of each other, and I thought that was really cool.
It is cool. But anyway, I mean, the community is so creative, and we just see all these things coming in. I mean, you walk around the dealer's room, and there's people making jewelry, there's people making stuffed animals, people making tails, people writing books. There's now, like, plenty of... There's 2 major furry publishers, and there's a few major furry comic and book distributors. There's just... there's everything. We have, someone in the audience. There's this like furry dance community now going on, which we found for the first time at FWA, and I think I talked about it on the podcast. Which was, Kit has a crush on one of the furry dancers, which is sweet and amusing. But so I just get inspired, and getting to meet the people at conventions who come around. I mean, you guys who come to the show, you guys inspire me, because getting to meet the people that your work touches, who are fans of it, who come by and tell you how much it means to them, that makes me want to do more.
Our first live podcast at Rainforest 09 blew my mind.
That was really cool. I was like,
why is there this room full of people here to listen to me and my friend talk in front of microphones for an hour?
And oh my God, what are we going to do? What the hell? But also, I do want to say, Kit inspires me. I've said that many times, just by being such a large part of my life and the kind of life that I want to live and that I want to tell other people about. I honestly feel like I didn't have that much to convey to the world before we started going out. So that's been real important. And having KM in our and KM in particular, and then the couple other people in our little writing group. Just having other people to sit around and talk about stories with, and talk about character development, and not just what are we working on now, but what can we do better? What would be a cool thing to try? Hey, how did this story do when you posted it online? And what reactions did you get? And hey, people really seem to like ringtails now. Let's write stories about ringtails. And that's just he keeps trying to get everyone else to write stories about his ringtail characters.
I got to read Isolation Play 9 months before any of the rest of you did.
And you read it 3 times.
I did. I did read it. And I wrote you giant notes on it every time I read it too.
Yes, you did, which were very helpful.
Some of them more helpful than others.
Yes.
There was one where there was this one page where I had a giant red star at the top of the page, and then in all capital letters with arrows pointing down, it said, "Make sure you get Blotch to draw this scene." And they did.
And as it turns out, I didn't have to make them do it because they wanted to. So
It was such a good scene to illustrate, too.
That was great. That was. Should we tell them which one it was? That was the devs on the phone scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you've read it,
people
you know.
who've read it, you know.
If you have to ask, you'll never know unless you read the book. In which case, now you'll know.
And we've talked about the writers who inspire us. The people that we read where we're like, oh my god, I want to be able to write like that, and how. How does David Mitchell?
I like how you said, like, people are sick of hearing me talk about David Mitchell and Kazuo Ishiguro by now.
Yes.
So let me try to talk about someone else.
Yes.
Actually, who I've been reading lately, who I hadn't actually read before until a couple of months ago, is Jim Butcher and the Dresden books. I'm only on, like, book 6, so no spoilers. I know the new book just came out, and, like, my roommate read it in, like, 3 days. But, no, like, he does a lot of great things with pacing and action that really impressed me. Where it's like it was the second book, Full Moon, like where I was like reading it, I'm just like, oh my god, I'm just like everything's like really like building to a head, and I'm like, wait, I'm only halfway through this book and I feel like I've already hit the climax. How is it going to keep? Oh, that's how it keeps. And just like that to me is I read that, I'm like, I want to be able to do that. I want to be able to like have people go like, oh my god, where can this possibly go from here? Oh, there. Like
yeah.
That's something that's like really neat.
That's cool. Yeah, I've been trying to read a little bit more diverse people. Crap, what was her name? The book that you conveyed to me from Kamui.
Oh,
that was The God in Flight. Is the name of the
I remember
book.
the name
and
of
it's
the book.
Laura,
I forget who wrote
Albright? Something
that
like
sounds about right.
It's something like that. The title of the book is The God in Flight. It's a 1880s gay romance that takes place around Yale University, and it is way better than I just made it sound. It is, and it is really just. I had to stop reading it in the middle of it because I had to go focus on other projects, and it is one of those books that I cannot wait to get back to. It's the way, and it's one of the books. It's written in kind of this Victorian style, which is interesting. As I've talked about before, I'm writing a sort of historical kind of novel, and so the way people can use these sort of huge, long paragraphs of description and internal emotion that was all sort of the rage in Victorian era is just fascinating to me because I cannot do that. And so I'm reading this and I'm kind of like, I really want to learn how to do this. At the same time, you know, one of the things that I think I've mentioned this on the podcast because I picked this up back in March, the quote from Faulkner.
Oh, right.
That basically says, don't waste your time trying to be better than other people. Be better than yourself. And you have to recognize that you do certain things well, and you can always do those things better. There are people that do lots of other things well that you cannot do well, and you know, focus on the stuff that you can do because no one else can do that. So that also is kind of inspirational to me, and I think a large part of being a writer is kind of going through these early phases and figuring out what it is that you do well. Because you will love many books, and Ira Glass calls this the creative gap, something like that. There's this gap because you get into a field because you love the work being done in the field, but at the time you get into trying to create your own work, you are not as good as the people that you like, and you become aware of this gap, and you have to push past it because you will get better. But I think a lot of being a writer is finding out what you do well and what you enjoy doing and just focusing on that. So in that respect, I don't know.
That's
Where am I
inspiring.
going with that? That's inspiring. Yay.
And also, just real quick, I just looked it up. The author that Kyle was mentioning, it's Laura Argiri.
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 Yeah. So look that book up. That is some good stuff. One more question? One more. Oh, we have two. All right. Come on up. And whoever was in the back, come on up also. We'll do...
Oh, it's just Zia.
Oh, it's just Zia. All right.
Zia, you got to be on our podcast.
So I've never actually
listened to any of your shows before. I sort of came here on a whim.
Okay. What's your name?
My name's Belier.
Okay.
Bighorn sheep.
Cool.
So
I love bighorn sheep and all hoofed animals, as everyone knows.
And you had Father Joe in Waterways.
That's what I keep telling people, but it doesn't seem to impress them.
So you mentioned the whole artwork thing, but art in itself is sort of a very wide variety of things. In particular, at the beginning, before even recording, you were singing, and I was actually wondering, do either of you two have a musical history? And there's a second part to that, which is, do you think that there's any a sort of growing of music in the community, in the furry community?
That's a good question, actually.
I'm going to answer the second one first because I think it's a more interesting question. I think there's definitely a growing musical community in the furry community. You've got I could rattle off some names, but then I would definitely be leaving some people out. But people are uploading music to FA. People are uploading music to YouTube. You've got people releasing albums, and I mean, we've had just the people that have been performing live music at conventions that I've been to in the last year. Matthew Emil, Sublevel 3, Bucktown Tiger, yes. We had Colson on our podcast, and he did the theme music that we play at the beginning of every episode. Fox and Moore has released albums online. I said I wasn't going to name people, and now I am. But so sorry, anyone I'm leaving out. But the tricky thing with that has always been, how do people make music furry? And I know specifically, like Fox and Moore does instrumental pieces mostly, and it seems to be mostly furry because he's furry. And I kind of think that's enough. That it's music created within the fandom for the fandom. And I think that's kind of cool, and I don't envy them the task of trying to tailor their music to a furry audience when, you could say, well, this is created by a furry, but then there's these other 4 artists who are creating the same kind of music who aren't furry, and, you can kind of play them interchangeably, and, how do you make furries listen to your music? Bucktown and Sublevel 3 and Matthew Emil all do it by lyrics. But I don't know. What are your thoughts?
So no, I agree with all that there. With it is hard to pin down what makes the music furry, and again, I think that in a lot of sense, like he said, it is enough to know that this is somebody from within your own community who's doing it, and that's fun and cool to be able to support.
They're apparently cleaning the carpets behind us outside the door.
This sort of leads back into the first part of the question, but I don't have a... Oh, hold on.
Yay, Kit.
This is why he's the alpha wolf.
Yes.
Poor guy is probably now mortified.
I got shut down by a furry. No, but I'll try to keep this brief.
Meanwhile, back at the podcast.
Why is the wine gone? No, don't make me. All right, because
mix it with the Coke Zero.
No, oh my god.
But it's Japanese. It goes with raw fish.
It's Japanese and salmon flavored, and I'm gonna. Oh my god, it's the me drink. You turned me into a drink. No, okay.
So there's already the Kyell Gold cocktail, which is 1 part Diet Dr. Pepper to 3 parts Coke Zero. So now there's the K.M. Hirosaki, which is vodka, salmon flavored vodka, and Japanese Coke Zero.
I will point out, so
it might only ever be available right here at this table.
So there's Kyell wrote a sex story about me that involves one of the drinks that they made at the hotel bar where Rainforest used to be held. It's called the Rain City Punch, which I believe has vodka in it. And in this story, I remark about the salmon flavor of it, and it's now I can actually make a salmon flavored Rain City Punch, and that's horrifying.
Because he's an otter, so I figured he'd have a fish-flavored drink, you know?
Oh no. What? Why is this thing a thing?
We're going to try the K.M. Hirosaki cocktail here on the...
Alright. For the first time ever, if I throw up all over this table, Soren, I apologize.
Yeah, Kit.
Wow, that is bizarrely not terrible. Although it is really weird. Like platypus weird.
And he finished it, no less.
Alright. Oh yeah, so I was talking about getting back to things. So I don't have
You can't just go on like nothing just happened.
I just drank salmon and Coke. What do you want?
I don't know, but I want more than just getting back to the discussion we were having.
No, it really does feel like
Is there an aftertaste?
Yeah, it's an aftertaste of salmon. No, it really is. Like, it really does feel like I just took like some lox, like a lox spread, smeared it on my tongue, and like downed it with a thing of Coke, and that's what my mouth tastes like right now. I will point out, nowhere in this equation does the flavor of vodka come in. And this is, it's 80 proof. Oh my god. Don't ever mix me one of those or I will kill you. So, hold on. 3, 2, and back to normal. I don't have an actual music background, but I do karaoke. I do it pretty regularly. I used to do it regularly a long time ago, and I sort of fell out of it, but I've recently gotten back into it. And weirdly enough, at the karaoke bar I go to, I was talking to someone who isn't a furry, but we were talking about music, and he was talking about instrumental music, and at one point in the conversation, he's like rattling off names, and then he says, Foxamore. And I'm like, wait, and so like I stop him, and I ask him a couple of questions that basically, like, Nurse is like, no, you are talking about the Foxamore I'm thinking of, like, oh my god, how do you know who this person is? But
that's awesome,
actually. And he has a lot of very, very flattering things to say about him.
Foxamore is fairly awesome.
No, yeah, like Foxamore's
If you have not checked out his stuff on FA, it's Fox AMOORE, all one word. Do go check him out.
But yeah, no, so I do, I do really like to sing, and like a lot of people like her like I won't lie, karaoke is a funny thing, and a lot of the fun of karaoke is watching drunk people make fools of themselves. But I mean, when you do it regularly, it starts to become you start thinking like, all right, what songs am I good at? What songs am I going to be able to sing well? And like, there are some people like who are like, who go to the karaoke place I go to, and it's just like, wow, like, you are like really good. Like, you see people on like American Idol auditions, it's just like, no, like, these people like that sing in this dive bar in California, just like, no, like, you know how to sing. There's actually a karaoke competition in like 3 days back in the San Francisco Bay Area that I'm going to enter. I don't expect to win or even place or anything, but I'm going to do it because it sounds like it'll be fun.
Sounds fun.
Like I said, don't try to be better than other people, just try to be better than yourself.
Yep.
And I just want to go there and, my goal is don't get laughed off stage.
Which is an admirable goal.
Which, I mean, some people here heard me singing before we started recording, and nobody was like, oh my god, what are you doing? People were like, no, keep singing. And I was like, what? Okay. And I'm like, I'm not going to sing louder for you, and then I did because I kowtowed to peer pressure.
Yes, because you're an otter.
Yeah, I'm all pushable and...
Yes.
Now I've had
flexible.
wine
and salmon flavored vodka.
And I got to pour myself a shot of it too.
And may I just say, you left salmon breath now, so you're very otterific. I had kind of the exposure to music that most middle class American kids have
otter breath.
Like I took piano lessons and played an instrument in school, and we play rock band from time to time, and I can hit some of the notes when we sing, and I can sort of hit drums, and that's about it.
Sometimes we duet.
Sometimes we duet. You could,
When we do Meatloaf's Paradise by the Dashboard Light, I'm the girl.
I'll just leave that statement where it is. I think we're probably about out of time, so Zia, you'll have to save your question for another podcast, I'm afraid.
Or ask us afterwards.
Which would be just as entertaining.
Kyle.
What? Well, no, if we're not going to share with the people on listening online later, why would we share it with you? He's getting amusing text messages, basically calling him a lifestyler for his otter breath.
Someone in the audience who shall go unnamed just texted me and accused me of being a lifestyler for having otter breath.
So we would like to thank all of you for coming and spending an hour and 15 minutes or hour and a half, whatever, of your Saturday night at a convention with us.
Yeah.
We love the company. As we said, y'all are very inspiring to us. You make us keep wanting to do these podcasts and keep writing and getting our stuff out there. We are, we are Unsheathed on Fur Affinity. Mostly all we post there is sort of the links to the show. We're on iTunes. If you don't want to go onto iTunes, go on to Fur Affinity and look at one of the journals. We have the link to the RSS feed up there.
If you give us fan art, we will post it.
We will post fan art. We have a tradition at some of the conventions that people draw fan art during the live shows and then fluster us with it afterwards or during. I am Kyle Gold on Twitter, and I'm Kyle Gold on LiveJournal. Although I've moved my blog kind of, but it still posts there.
It still posts there, yeah.
I'm Kyle on Fur Affinity.
I am K.M. Hirosaki on Twitter, LiveJournal, Fur Affinity, and So Furry.
And Kit is Kit Silver on Twitter. And I think that's it. If anyone in the audience is over 21 and would like to try the Wasilla, Alaska smoked salmon vodka,
It's going fast. I am amazed that I thought we were I was going to have a 90% full bottle of salmon vodka at the end of the weekend and just pour it down a drain, and I think we're going to finish it.
You may come on up after the show to try it out. You people listening at home, check your local liquor store if you happen to be in the Denver area.
Alaska Distillery.
Or Alaska. They have them in Texas also?
Oh, wow, okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, again, thank you all for attending. Thank you all out there in the podcast ethosphere for listening.
I just want to say before we close, I have really missed getting to podcast with Kyle here.
I've missed it. It's a hallmark moment.
I have a lot of fun doing this, so.
You're getting drunk and maudlin.
I'm not being maudlin. I'm happy and smiling and perky.
I know.
I don't know. Kid saw me drunk and maudlin a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, okay.
At the karaoke bar, actually.
We won't revisit that. Thank you, everybody. Good night, and remember, keep writing.